How the madness began. To what extent did the increased number of reports reflect an increased risk to children as opposed to increased awareness of abuse? Because social expectations play a large role in the identification of maltreatment, there probably is no definitive answer to this question. On the one hand, the past 2 decades were characterized by increases in the number of single-parent households, a risk factor for sexual abuse. On the other hand, changing awareness of abuse and mandated reporting also may have fueled the increase in reporting rates. For example, C.C. and Bruck, 1995, argued that younger and older adults seemed equally likely to have been sexually abused as children, suggesting that there have been no dramatic changes in prevalence. In addition, although many more cases are reported, the number of cases that are classified as substantiated has remained steady or dropped slightly. Besharov, 1990, C.C. and Bruck, 1995. Nonetheless, the number of arrests for sexual offenses has increased markedly, from approximately 159,200 in 1976 to more than 247,000 in 1991. U.S. Department of Justice, 1978 and 1992. Assuming that Besharov, 1990, C.C. and Bruck, 1995, who are working child maltreatment cases every day are correct, and the number of actual reports of child maltreatment has remained the same or slightly decreased since 1965. Then all of the reported incidents of child maltreatment above the red line represent the number of reports that created wrongful accusations per year, a substantial increase which is corroborated by the U.S. Department of Justice statistics above. Because 90% of those charged with an offense take a plea bargain, and out of those that go to trial, only a small number of them actually win their trial. This means that at least 5,853 innocent people are convicted for child maltreatment every year in the United States. Everson and Boat in 1988 reported that common reasonings for identifying an allegation as false were improbable, inconsistent, or recanted reports. In 59% of these cases, respondents concluded that the child or adolescent had deliberately fabricated in order to obtain secondary gains, such as changes in living arrangements or to retaliate against a parent. Many authors have noted how moral panics and resulting controversies often developed during periods of rapid social change. For example, Robin in 1991 wrote an insightful essay on how American individualism favors solutions to social problems that focus on individual deviance rather than changes in the basic organization of society. Furthermore, he noted how changes in sexuality, sexual identity, and family roles, threats to the traditional family, have allowed child abuse to become a convenient focus for public anxiety about changing social conditions related to the family. Similarly, Tavry in 1992 argued that some women who became entangled in the survivor movement in the absence of prior concerns about their childhood identified with the sexual victim culture because it provided a lightning rod for the inchoate feelings of victimization they have as a result of their status in society at large. It provides a clear focus than such vague enemies as the system, sexism, deadening work, welfare, or boredom. These and other system-level critiques do not deny the reality of abuse or minimize its consequences. Rather, they attempt to understand the moral panic in recent decades that has fostered increased concerns. During the past decades, the challenges when confronted fueled a market for pop psychology, self-help books written by professionals, and therapy by licensed professionals. In many of these forms, women's depression and anxiety were explained as consequences of individual personalities, decisions, or life experiences, rather than as predictable responses to social and economic circumstances. The tendency to attribute women's problems to their individual experiences is reflected in the intense controversy over repressed memories of childhood sexual abuse. Some of the women who flooded into therapy during the past decade for depression, anxiety, and relationship problems were told that their difficulties resembled those of women who had been sexually abused. Clinicians sometimes used special techniques to help their clients recall abusive experiences, including hypnosis, dream interpretation, and guided imagery, under the assumption that the presumed abuse must be remembered before therapy could be successful. In one study, 25% of the doctor-level therapists surveyed reported that A. They sometimes concluded only after one session the clients who did not report abuse had in fact been abused as children. B. Abused clients needed to acknowledge or remember their abuse for therapy to be effective. And C. They used 2 or more therapeutic techniques specifically to help clients remember childhood sexual abuse. Poole, Lindsay, Memon, Bull in 1995. By their own estimates, these American and British therapists were often successful in retrieving memories of abuse. Extrapolation into the population of therapists from which the sample had been drawn suggested that during the 2-year period examined by the survey, hundreds of thousands of women were exposed to therapists who held such beliefs. On a specific calculation of our data, it may be stated that at least 85% of the younger male population could be convicted as sex offenders if law enforcement officials were as efficient as most people expect them to be. The stray boy who is caught and brought before the court may not be different from most of his fellows, but the public, not knowing of the near universality of adolescent sexual activity, heaps the penalty for the whole group upon the shoulders of the one boy who happens to be apprehended. This situation presents a considerable dilemma for law enforcement officials and for students of the social organization as a whole. Kinsey, 1948, page 224, False Allegations. What I believe is happening here is proof of a complete breakdown of our society and the institutions we have created to ensure justice and fairness in our culture. As these conditions are allowed to continue and progress, the public will become increasingly aware that certain positions of employment carry with them a tremendous burden of risk. Consequently, you will see a mass exodus of people away from occupations such as gynecologist, daycare provider, pediatrician, and of course teachers, which seem to be the hardest hit of any of these professions with regard to molestation accusations. The public as a whole does not see this yet, but within another decade reality will sink in when you are unable to find a gynecologist available to take you as a patient. There are no pediatricians in your entire county to send your child to when they become sick, and there are no teachers willing to take on the job of teaching your children because the risk of false accusations are too high. The distrust between the sexes, as bad enough as it is now, will reach a point where nobody in our society trusts anyone. When that day arrives, it will be a good day to be living in another country.